Welcome, everyone, to our webinar, and we're glad you've joined us. We have a big group today, so we will give us a few minutes to let people get comfortable and grab your coffee because we're going to have some great discussion. Many of you are probably in frigid weather like we are here in Texas and Atlanta, and you may be too. So got a lot to talk about. So I see lots and lots of participants popping on, and we'll just give a few more minutes. As we're doing that, we have a poll that we're going to bring up so we get an idea of who is out there from the different sectors of the community. We know that we have many varied captions. Can we activate captions? Yes, we can do that. So here's a poll. If you would like to do that for us, then we know who we're talking to out there. So love to hear where everybody's come from. And I also encourage you to use the chat and tell us where you're from. We'd love to know what part of the country you are from and what organization you're from. So don't hesitate to chat, and that way others can see you as well. Okay, looks like participants slowing down a bit, so we will go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to the webinar today. I'm Pam Brandon. I am the founder of AGE-u-cate Training Institute and very honored to be here with our esteemed panel. Going to talk about some very critical and complex topics today in addressing the dementia crisis in communities of color. So meant to be a discussion. I ask all of you out there, if you do have questions, if you can use the Q&A for those. We will be watching those and making sure that we address specific questions to the speakers or general questions for all of us to discuss. If you are wanting CEUs, we will give you that link in the chat at the end of the webinar. So your instructions and survey will be there. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. And looks like we have dementia-friendly, elder care, universities, hospitals. Wow, we've got a great mix here. So gives you a good idea of all the interest out there. And there are many people on the discussion today. So let's go ahead and get started. And I will go ahead and introduce our first speaker. And that is Dr. Bashir Easter, a great partner of AGE-u-cate's. He is the founder and CEO of Melanin Minded LLC and Melanin Minded Foundation, whose collective mission is to be the bridge of information, services, and support for people of color with a long-term vision to empower and equip them with an optimal quality of life. In 2020, he completed his doctoral research focusing on African American adolescents' internal and external experiences caring for a family member living with dementia. He became the first dementia care specialist for the Milwaukee County of Aging, working with community partners to make a significant impact on creating a dementia-capable system and a dementia-capable community. And his work is grounded in his personal journey like mine, and I look forward to having you share that with us, Dr. Bashir, so welcome. Our next panelist is Sonia Gunter. Her 20-year experience in her nursing career led her to her entrepreneurial leadership of 3 successful businesses in the Metro Atlanta area. Senior 911 is a private duty home care agency. Dementia 911 is a dementia education and staff consulting company, and Angel 911 is a nonprofit that serves families caring for loved ones in their home with needed respite care. She is a speaker, an author, a radio show host, and a strong advocate for people with dementia and for developing healthcare leaders in this space. She too is passionately working to improve the quality of life, especially in underserved populations for people with dementia and their families. And next we have, hello, Dr. Epps. She is welcome to Texas. She is the founder of the Alter program, the only nurse-led dementia-friendly congregation program. She is a nurse with 20 years of experience creating culturally relevant programs to reduce health disparities for underserved populations. She's a professor in the Karen and Ronald Herman Distinguished Chair in Caregiver Research at the University of Texas Health Center and San Antonio School of Nursing. Hope I had that all right. Her research has involved evidence-based practices for promoting quality of life for African Americans with dementia and their family caregivers, and how religious activities and spiritual connectedness promote meaningful engagement. So there you go. We have a very well-rounded and esteemed panel here with lots and lots of experience for us to start an impactful discussion. So let's start by talking first about how dementia is impacting communities of color. So in the African American community, they are twice as likely to have dementia. In the Latino community, that statistic is 1.5. So let's talk about that, those statistics and how we've gotten here. Dr. Bashir.
Before we answer those questions or the conversation, you have a few people in the chat asking for captions. They're saying they're needing that. I would hate for someone to miss this important information if we're able to give them captions.
Sonia.
Yes, ma'am.
We're trying to get that.
I am trying
Okay.
Does anybody know how to turn closed captions on so I can do that? I cannot find that section. It changes often and I'm not finding it. So I'm working on it.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Thank you for seeing that. And we'll hopefully get that up in just a minute. All right. Let's talk about the numbers and why we're all doing what we're doing and addressing this crisis. And Dr. Bashir, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, thank you, Pam and Laura, for putting this together. I'm extremely excited for this to be the first time that I'm on this panel with my ladies. I'm saying this first, not knowing the numbers that's prevalent. We do believe those numbers are low. As my journey began, was because my mother was impacted with the term just dementia. There was no conversation on the numbers, right? It was, what do we do to be able to provide care? And then as we did not get that information connected from the doctor to tell us about resources, services, supports, it was astonishing after 6 years of providing care of not understanding when I first started to learn about these numbers 6 years after her first diagnosis with dementia. I was taken back that these numbers were out there and we were still not all getting a bucket to help trying to put that fire out. It's very clear as we talk about the crisis of the numbers, it's not only just the industry. When I say the industry, the individuals who've already been in this role to be able to talk about resources, services, supports, understanding those numbers, and then having the difficulties. It's also with our culture to understand that they don't know the numbers. That's why I brought up that conversation of me not knowing. The reason why we don't know those numbers either has not been given to us, maybe it's culture is an issue that we add to that. Those numbers are astonishing, and I say they're low because we're talking about misdiagnosis. We're talking about undiagnosed. We're also talking about bias in healthcare. We talk about discrimination, racism. All that goes into play. And when we talk about what are the true numbers and what's really going on, by those numbers being that as they are, I'm glad that we're able to have this moment to talk about what are we doing about those numbers, not to necessarily lower them. We're really trying to find out what is the true accurate number that's out there, and then get the stigma reduced so we have more people that are going to be able to be tested and get the help that they need.
Wow.
If I may chime in behind Dr. Bashir, I just wanted to add that unfortunately, throughout healthcare as it stands, with every diagnosis, most disease processes, we understand that it is the African American and the brown and Black population that seems to numbers are just above the rest in terms of diagnosing and illness. We seem to be the ones that are always on the lower end of the stick in terms of healthcare, whether it be resources, access to healthcare, and just higher diagnosis due to poor health outcomes and things of that nature. So I'm not surprised that the numbers for us are higher. And just to add to the dementia, the number of dementia diagnoses, we know in our field that doctors are misdiagnosing across the board for everyone. And so, and a lot of people have dementia or being diagnosed with dementia, different types, or misdiagnosed, as we said. And so numbers being skewed across the line with many other demographics, and just with the African American and Hispanic population being the ones that suffer the greatest, per usual, per every other diagnosis in health disease that's out there.
Yeah, and then I would add, so I would say I was astonished at the numbers. So when these numbers, they've been around for I've been doing this for about 10 years. And so these numbers probably was around before then. But in 2011-ish, it's when I started reading the literature and I seen these numbers. And I was shocked. I could not believe this. There's no way that I am a nurse, a healthcare professional working out here and had no clue that these various forms of dementia impacted my family, my community, as the research, as the literature was saying. And so actually that's what really sparked me to dig a little bit more and find out, well, why is it? Why don't I know? Why don't my mom know? My family, my community know about these numbers? And so that's what started me on the journey, because I was shocked about the numbers. And I understand what Dr. Easter is saying, how those numbers are probably low. And that is, I'm like, that's not good. That is not good. But I will admit that I didn't even know the numbers. And again, I was a nurse. So I say that because a lot of times we make assumptions. We talk about the community, but we're making assumptions that also healthcare professionals know about this. And many do not. Because if I'm working in underserved, under-resourced areas that tend to take care of more Black and brown people, that means these individuals are probably not diagnosed properly. So I'm not seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
But this paper, the facts and figures says this and says this, but it took effort for me to dig. And I would tell you all, once I started on this journey, I ended up finding out that friends, close friends, were caring for their mother with dementia. So it was right in front of my face. It's just that in our community, we did not talk about it. We didn't put a name to it. But once I started digging and looking at understanding the signs and symptoms and talking about it more openly, then I had friends saying, well, yeah, my mom, she has something like Lewy body. What? Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we just put our grandmother in a nursing home because she got diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and we couldn't do anything about it. But this was stuff that we didn't talk about, but we had been friends for 5+ years.
You're exactly right. Caregivers do not self-identify often. I did much of my early work in this space in my career, running support groups in faith communities. And it is amazing how much caregivers do not want to share that their role as a caregiver. And I think in the underserved communities, we find that we don't know the numbers. We don't know because of all these other health disparities and lack of access to care. Not sure we'll really know the numbers, but we have a lot to address, right?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
let's talk about how we're addressing that, and especially, you know, the topic of through the faith communities, why you have chosen your work through the faith communities, in being stakeholders in addressing this, and a lifeline for education and support and resources, which, you know, I think we're all in agreement here that that is so much of what is needed for us to move the needle with this problem. So let's talk about the faith community and their role.
So, one thing before we go into the faith community, I just want to make sure everybody's very clear, because we all have our experiences, right, on this journey. But when we look at all of us here, we really focus on the Black community. And I want to just make sure, you know, the question would be, well, why don't people in the Black community come out and share things? And I just want to be very clear that it's for various reasons that the majority population may not recognize. But, you know, many times in our community, what happens at home stays at home, and you don't want to air your business. But also, when you share a diagnosis or share what you're going through, that can look as a sign of weakness. And that is really big in the Black community. If we go back and we think on history and stuff like that, you know, many people don't want to give, because then that means they're weak. And then people may come in and take away something that they fought so hard for. So I just want us to just not just brush over that, really understand that the context on why that may occur. Dr. Issa, I'll share, pass it to you.
No, you had it. You were on it. I use the term that culture and denial is killing us. And the reason why I say that is use it in the conversation. It's 2024. We still use the term in our community. It's old timers. It's old timers. See now? That means they actually heard the term. I say Alzheimer's. They've heard it, but in that, not understanding the nuances of how the brain is actually functioning, we're actually using terms and basically what we see with our eyes. And what the culture piece is, we're already very protective, right? As you say, what happens in the home stays in the home. You don't let anybody in. And I say very clear, that has to go out the window when it comes down to this disease. The amount of services and supports that are out there to actually help, you're not letting them into your home, and you're thinking you can do this like it's normal aging. And that's why the majority of the time when I was working for the county, I met people in the community in crisis. They're in crisis. They didn't get the help at the earlier stage of it because the stigma was so thick. The other thing that goes along with that, as we're going to talk about the churches, is we talk about our faith. Our faith is very strong in the African American, Latino community. It's very strong. But in that, it is a belief that you can pray it away. It is a belief that all I got to do is wait on the Lord. And if you don't do that, that means you're not a believer, or that you don't have those understandings of what Christ has done for you. And that's just not true. You'll go to the doctor to get help with other ailments. You'll go and get a medication to help you with a headache. But when it comes down to something at this part that we talk about that is going to impact the whole family, we don't want to talk about, don't want to deal with it. And then really the reality of it is it has to come from our Black and brown communities. That's why I'm so happy we're having this discussion, to go in and say, hey, y'all, open up those windows, open up this door. We have to have this conversation, because we are at the bottom. And we're going to continue to keep calling it old times, not understanding there's a whole bunch of services, information, and help that's out there. But you got to first have the ability to be okay to say we're not okay. And I'm in this one piece of this is I did my research and I had conversations. I was talking to Dr. Epps about this. And I did a conversation at one of the churches I was there. I Googled how many African Americans, celebrities, were impacted by this disease. There's only one person that came up. I Googled our Caucasian brothers and sisters that are a celebrity that are impacted by this disease. It just kept coming up. Latino, 0. So I said, even the algorithm does not even recognize that African Americans, Latinos at their hardest hit this disease. So we also got to talk about, how is this being shown? How is this being portrayed? How is this being seen? That we have to be able to understand that, yes, we are the hardest hit. So somebody else also needs to get a bucket to help us in that process. I wanted to share that.
So with it, Sonia, did you want to add to that?
I just wanted to add, with the work that Dr. Farron Epps in particular is doing in the faith community is so admirable, because I grew up in the church myself. I'm a licensed evangelist, even in the Church of God in Christ. And so very involved in ministry. And what I remember earlier days and earlier times, even moving here to Atlanta, knowing the history of the church and the role that the church played in the Black community, we had meetings that were meetings and movements that spoke to the community. And we've gotten away from that in more recent times, and services have gotten to be more feel good and more, ear ticklers, they call them, and getting the people to come in and getting the crowds in, but getting away from the mission of what true ministry is about. And so knowing that, getting back into the churches and starting there, again, just as Dr. Bashir has stated, we have a faith and belief, and we go to God, and we look for these miracles to take place. But we need, because there is such a belief and faith in God, we need that the real truth and that the information is spoken at that level, because the Black folks trust the church. We trust the church before we trust the doctors. And that's just the way it's been over the years. And so starting in the faith communities and the church is taking responsibility, Black, white, brown, from the pulpit is where this information really needs to be disseminated from.
Let's talk about the work that all of you are doing in the faith community, because really it is the foundational work of the Altar program, of Melanin Minded. Sonia, you are obviously working, and have very closely, all of us believe that the faith community is going to be the outlet, if that's the right word. That is where we can open those conversations and destigmatize dementia, right? Educate our communities, build those relationships that are going to break down the barriers. Would you agree? Tell us.
If I may, I'm so sorry, Dr. Fay, and I know Dr. Farron is the expert in this piece. I just want to say, and it relates to Dr. Farron and Dr. Bashir, I don't necessarily work in the faith community. I'm more ministry minded. What I do every day is ministry. So I'm beyond the four walls. And that, I think, is where we have to start as a people. And if you're going to do the work, that the church is great and it needs to start there, but we have to be really ministry minded in our spirit and understand that the church we are the church as individuals, and we take the message out. And so as it relates to Dr. Farron, Dr. Bashir will make very clear, I'm not in a faith-based role per se, but what I do is ministry all day, every day, alongside these wonderful doctors.
That's right, Sonia. We are all ministry minded, and I think all of our work is our ministry. This is why we do it 24/7, nonstop. We don't sleep, because we want to make sure that we serve the people who need things the most. And so I particularly work with faith communities because, as mentioned earlier, they are the cornerstone of many communities, especially in the Black community. And you may say, oh, people, they don't go to church like they used to. And that is true. But let something happen. Let something go down. They're going to be at church, or they're going to be calling the pastor. And so they may not attend church service, but still that pastor is a key leader in the community and for many families. And so when I started working with faith communities and started speaking with ministry leaders and faith leaders, I found out that they did not know. And so here I wasn't bashing our faith communities, but I was like, they're not stepping up to the plate. They're not doing this. But when I got down to speak to them, I realized, how can I expect them to do certain things if they've never been educated, never been given the tools that they need so they can truly properly support their parishioners, so they can truly properly support those families that in the community that they serve. And that was the foundation of Altar, was me making sure that we create a program, a framework, a model that we can offer to our faith leaders, to our congregations, our places of worship, that they can put in place. Many times people were saying education, education, which is great, but I needed to take it a step further because I've been faced with one key question: what do you do with this education? And so that's the question that I'm going to put out there for everyone who is out there doing education, working with leaders. How are you going to help them apply the education? And that's what stands out about Altar. It's making sure that we coach them on how to apply it so they can now support these families. And now families can return back to the faith community. Now they can enjoy and come to worship service because now our leaders have put things in place. They have invested in this. They understand what is needed to support these individuals. And we can change our perception of how we look at dementia in the Black community. That is not, oh, a dreadful disease. You're not cursed. We can change that and hopefully have families live fully while they're on this journey.
And how we got into the faith-based community really was the Lord told me to take it to holy ground first. And so what do I mean by that? What do we take? So the services that we were providing really was focused on the community, period. And that was, we have a service called the Navigator Transportation, where it's individuals with the early stages of the disease, seniors and people with limited disabilities are now, you can use a ride share app-based service to get them back into the community that they stepped away from. And to do that, we were able to get drivers and riders that were trained to get individuals back, and really was trying to start that process of building a dementia-capable, dementia-friendly community. Well, I started, the mindset was what? To take it to the church. And why I brought it to them, I brought it to in Milwaukee. His name is Pastor Marlon Locke with Unity Gospel House and Prayer. And really it was just to say, hey, this is what I want to do with this. And he started to tell me that he is noticing things in his church, but he doesn't know how to address it to them. And so what we were hoping to do, because the church a lot of times has all of these other people that actually attend the church have different titles, positions that are in the community as a whole, but they're also probably caregiving for someone or have cared for someone. And so when I decided to bring it to the church, that's when we made the connection because of you all at AGE-u-cate through Dr. Epps. And I did not know there was curriculum. So Milwaukee County is going to have the first 10 in its county to go through that curriculum to then help build out the dementia-capable, dementia-friendly communities. Because they're going to do what? Share as a word of mouth by getting these services right in the heart of these communities that have not been really served of giving that information. And so the goal of it is not to just put it in these churches and it stays there. The goal is the information, the services, supports goes to these, and then they send it out. They now are the advocates. They are now the ones to be able to say, hey, I got this resource. I'm now connected to this support. And they are now building it from the ground up instead of having larger organizations come in and say, you need to do this for your community. It makes them have a buy-in. We're talking about immediate services. And so the other group that we focus on is the youth. The youth are considered the invisible caregiver in regards to this. As African-American Latinos provide care, they're doing it the exact same way, but they're doing it even less knowledge and understanding of how to care for grandmother and grandfather. So that is really where we're trying to build the community to sustain itself, bring resources and dollars in, and then lead out, because the church is a part of the community. Businesses will be a part of that. You have business owners that are in the church. You have all these individuals that are there. The goal is to have a location, a unit to then start disseminating these things out from the church. So it does come not just in the walls, they're now coming out of the walls to serve the community that they are in as well.
Yeah, one of the questions was how to reach outside of the church, other means to reach outside of the church. And I think that that question has been answered by what you just said, Dr. Bashir and Dr. Epps. But collaboration is key. Would you not say that we cannot do this alone? The faith communities cannot do this alone. They have to collaborate with others in the organization who are like-minded in seeing change happen and who can move the needle. So talk a little bit about the importance of collaborative efforts in creating dementia-capable systems, dementia-friendly initiatives. How is that actually going to happen with the church being a key player in that?
Let me add this one piece and add it for Sonia. I didn't know about what Sonia did until I actually took the trip to see Dr. Epps. And Dr. Epps said, I got somebody I need you to meet. We weren't able to meet that first time. And then we end up setting up another meeting. We talked on the phone, we text. That's what we're talking about. Everybody has a gift in this circle that we're doing, and even gifts that is given to them, and a lane that they're in. And that is what I'm like, you know what you have, people need to hear about. So immediately what we started doing was we locked in on our social media. We made connections even on our webpage. That is the mindset that we're trying to do also in the communities, is to let more people know about what Sonia does in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Dallas, Texas, Ohio. It is to bring people together to talk about we are all in this together to make this happen, to educate with Dementia Live. We had the youth do Dementia Live. We filmed it, put it on. What you did for us to do that white paper on us, that expanded people to be able to say, what are they doing? What's happening? You're absolutely right. The community needs to also know about these resources, but they also need to be able to be the voice as well. So I wanted to say that as well, to talk about the collaboration has to start with the experts that are in the room to be willing to step out of even their areas to be able to do more, share more.
I would like to add to that, Dr. Bashir, and panel, thank you for mentioning that. I'm a consummate networker, right? So when I started in the industry, yes, been a nurse 20 years, but I started this dementia work as a daughter first, with my own father. And then it really parlayed into really the passion and the drive years later. But I say that to say, when you start in somewhere, you know, you're networking in your niche, you're networking in your little circle, your neighborhood, your back door. And I found myself getting frustrated with that because it's the same faces in the same places. And after a while, it feels more like we're getting together, kind of click, right? I'm going to refer to this one, refer to that one because I like her shoes. And when we go, you know, I like eating at the same lunch places you like eating at. And what I discovered is that there's so much more talent and knowledge and experience throughout. And when I broke out of the shell or that narrative that this is the group and these are the people you are supposed to stick with, it's like my pastor used to teach us, get out of that mindset of my four and no more. That what you have to do is not just make sure the people around you are okay, but that you stretch out and beyond. And so I started my work in Gwinnett County, very heavily in Gwinnett County. And then I started reaching out into Atlanta and doing some work there. And from there is where truly the passion even blossomed even more, because it was now really seeing and getting involved and being able to touch many people. And so now in Kansas City, we're doing work in Kansas City, we're doing work in Birmingham, we're doing an Alzheimer's conference with Dr. Bashir in Dallas in June. So this is what the collaboration is about. Like, as he said, people with different skills, different talents, different information, and all of us not being afraid that somebody's going to get more shine, more look, more accolades. Let's just do the work. God's going to bless and give the increase when it's time. And that's the truth.
Absolutely. I think part of it is to realizing that none of us are experts. You know, we're all learning along the way. We're also, you know, the needs are greater than any of us can do on our own. So, you know, to think that we can attack this problem is staying in our own boxes, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the faith community as almost a, you know, hub and spoke that, you know, we're just building and building the network around us. One of the questions here is, to what extent do the speakers believe that the macro aging denial culture contributes to these challenges?
So I used to work for the Department on Aging in Milwaukee, and I had not worked in that demographic before originally. I actually was in the private sector and then went to school because I had that urge to help. So I got my human service degree in that, but I didn't want to lose business. So I started immediately. One thing that they say, as soon as you start to go towards any type of social support or human services, the child welfare calls first, right? They say, help the children. And I tip my hat off to anyone that is still in that field that's provided. It took me 2 years to say that was way too much for me. I saw so much. And but when I started looking for other places, that's when the Department on Aging called and I started working there. And I saw my eyes light up and I saw my passion was for the senior population. And what I noticed in regards to that is the mindset is some of them, you have to be intentional about showing the worth of what seniors have contributed, what they contribute, and how do you value them. And so it cannot be just lumped in to sometimes to just all one organization. It needs to be more specialized because there's some nuances that they do need to be focused on. When it comes down to that ageism, of recognizing that they can't contribute, that baby boomer generation, largest, the millennial group is the second largest now, but that baby boomer generation is still working. They're still doing things. They're changing landscapes. They're still here. In that, they're the hardest hit with this disease as well, right? Because they've lived longer. And the mindset of it is that what do we do? Because they're either adding more to the debt because we're providing these services. We're supposed to. We're supposed to help them. We're supposed to give them support. We're supposed to honor them. We should not let them go off the pasture and not give them what they need, because they were the ones that could lay this foundation and this work for us to be where we are right now. And I've heard the term is, if God gives you the time, you'll meet that time too. So even selfishly for myself, how we're building these dementia-friendly communities, I'm doing it just in case I get the disease. I'm building it for me. I want to be able to say that I've done this work, that at this point that I can actually go in and take the services that's going to help them all, that also is going to help me. And that's why I dig very hard to make sure that happens. But the senior population needs to be valued always. And if God gives you time, you'll meet that time too.
It's great. Another question is, what is your strategy for getting church leaders to buy into this idea that those of us in the field need their help to get information out to their congregants about Alzheimer's and dementia? How are we breaking the barriers, Dr. Epps?
Well, I don't know if it's really called a barrier. I think when you're looking to partner with faith leaders, you have to come and be vulnerable. Be honest, be transparent, and making sure you're coming to bring something to serve the people. Come with your heart, come out of love. And so when me and my team, when we approach it that way, faith leaders are listening. They can see your heart. They can see the passion, and you're educating them at the same time. The problems that I've seen when I have colleagues that try to work with faith leaders, they're coming in with their own agenda. They're not listening to the people. They're really not showing the love and the passion. And faith leaders, they do not have to say yes. We're going to be on board. So you have to just take a step back and say, okay, we want to help the people. How can we do this? Share the statistics, share what's going on, share with them stories, listen to them. Come up with a plan together. So I am a community engaged researcher. And one of those things is when you work with the community to come up with the solution, to come up with the research. Do that together. That's how you get buy-in. And I think, that's how we have been very successful in this short period of time, where over 5 years, we thought we may just have 20 20 faith communities that would be like, yeah, we'll work with you, Dr. S, and we'll see how this goes. But here we're close to 80 faith communities that came on. But that is the approach that everyone on my team, everyone I work with, that is the approach that we use. And again, I will tell you, not just faith leaders, the community can see when you're full of BS. I'm just going to be honest. They can see when you're coming with your own agenda and this is what we want, and we're not ready to give into the community. We're not ready to support. We're coming in for 5 minutes and we're going to take this and we're walking away. They can see that a mile away. You will not get buy-in. You will not have any movement. You will not see no improved outcomes doing it that way. So I'm all about challenging people. Think back to your methods, your strategies. What may need to change? And a lot we've heard the term health equity is, resurfacing and becoming really popular, and everyone wants to say it. But truly, one of the things is when we're trying to achieve health equity, we have to include the end users. We have to include the community from the get-go and have those conversations. So again, including the faith leaders in the beginning. But I will say now, I tell you all of that, sometimes you will get a no. But that does not mean, even though you're coming with the right heart, the right spirit, if you do receive a no, that does not mean it's going to be a no tomorrow, a no next week, a no next month. So when I do receive no's, I remain persistent and approach again. And that's the things I want to just encourage everyone. If you're working in the community, particularly with faith leaders or faith communities, places of worship, and the door is not open to you widely, quick at the beginning, I think that door is shut forever. Come back and revisit. Many of us are parents. We tell our kids no the first go round, but we can learn from them because they're very persistent. They're going to come back and ask that question. And eventually, I'll just tell them myself, eventually I give in and be like, yeah, you can go to the movies or something like that. So, I want us to kind of think about that, but make sure that you have the right spirit and you're honest and transparent when you're having these conversations with leaders in the community and the church.
Building that trust and relationship, and they will come back. If it's a no, they will come back in the future at some point. One question that I think is very good: what are the specific programs or education you provide to and through the faith community, and what do they usually buy in to do? Do you want to address that, Dr. Epps?
Y'all want me to address that? Yes. And so we have a framework. And so it's a partnership that we have with our faith community. So it's not just like they do one thing. We have an agreement that the senior leader signs and says, I am on board. I am committed to this mission. We ask them to implement 16 activities over a 2-year period. And these activities fall under education, awareness, support, and worship. And we guide them to select activities that it would be perfect for their community, for their congregation, for the community that they serve. And we coach them. So it varies. All churches do not do the same activity. And I think we all have to recognize that. It's just like person-centered, family-centered, church-centered. It's a community-centered. It's all about what's going on, what are their needs. And we have a living framework that they use, so it can change because we know life happens.
What about the intergenerational program? When you go in and start working with churches, do you build that those intergenerational activities so that all the church is included in this framework?
So intergenerational is one of the things that we promote among our faith communities, and some of the activities that they're doing. And we have some churches that are doing a great job at incorporating the youth. We're actually partnering with Dr. Easter to make sure we build that up and give them more examples on how they can do that. But we've had faith communities that have done dance parties, and so that's including the youth and the older adults that are living with dementia, because everybody likes to dance. And so that was an example. They had one that did gardening, art activities. And so these are just a few of the examples that we try to work with our faith communities and encourage them to include the youth, because that's one of the biggest things we want to make sure that we can bridge that gap. And I'm looking forward to continue to work with Dr. Easter so we can provide them additional examples and guidance on how they can do that.
And what we're doing with the youth through this movement is giving them a voice. We are making sure that they are able to understand that there are other youth that are providing care as well. And the other thing that we are making sure that there was 3 things that I got out of the research, that they had depression, they had PTSD, but they also had resiliency by providing this at that time in their age group and unnatural care as unnatural caregiving. And so what we are utilizing that intergenerational piece, it goes along with its music, as Dr. Epps talked about. We have the music and memory program that we do with them. They actually help create playlists for families who are living with, and for the caregivers, they sit down and actually have real conversations with the families. So then they can actually get that playlist and let them be played. A part of the transportation that we do is the navigated transportation. That playlist is played in the rides of the individuals. But then they create their own organic group. They don't like to be called have a support group. So they're creating an organic group to be able to communicate. They communicate by what? Text, online, those threads. So we support that, and it's led by a youth leader to be able to discuss what their nuances and their things that they're going through as they're providing care. The other thing that they're doing in regards to intergenerational is they're going out of the church. And so the Bridge Youth Coordinator, after they go through that, they're actually having more events that are led by them, right? To talk about the disease, but also we're helping the process of having that workforce development. Some of the things that is being brought to them goes along with what Sonia has, is to train them to be in healthcare, personal care work. We have nurses that give them the training from ambulation to med management, the ADLs, ADLs, but it exposes them to arena of like, I actually do this work at home. I didn't know I could get paid for it. I didn't know I can follow this into a healthcare field. So we're exposing them early to these connectors and stuff like that by showing them that the stuff you're already doing for your loved one, it can have your trajectory into possibly being a doctor, a researcher, a nurse, a physician, a surgeon. You can. So we're actually, it's a pipeline, and that goes along with that as well.
Kudos for your work, Sonia, too, in that arena in educating future healthcare leaders. Talk a little bit about how you're doing that.
Sure. So recently I was in doing a leadership training with my staff, and someone stopped me and said, Sonia, you're a teacher. And that is something that I've always known, that my first love is education and mentoring. And so I had parlayed that love into healthcare, and even wrote a book on professionalism in healthcare and the importance of education. So we take those that are young in the industry, entry level, especially at the job where I employ them, and just really encourage them to pursue higher education. We end up, we've spent money on scholarships for them to get, other certifications and other training, just really supporting that the younger generation, and not just younger, but just people. Sometimes it's young in the industry. We've had 62, 65-year-olds who are social workers or who are doing other things and decided that they wanted to turn and spin and go this direction because of things they had going on in their life, and things had changed for them. Their trajectory for their lives had changed. And so just being a support, providing guidance, providing mentorship, and where I can, even putting my money behind that and providing some certifications and training where able.
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity for older adults to give back with all the wisdom they have and the compassion, and they've walked the walk like so many of us, to be able to give, whether that's volunteer or actually enter the field later in life and as a career, and we just don't talk about it enough.
And I'd like to add to that about volunteering. I actually have a nonprofit, Angel 911, that supports caregivers. I think that's the big thing that Dr. Epps and I really partnered in, was the Angel 911 side of things. And so I am on the side of the caregiver who's caring for the loved one with dementia, and they can't afford services because we know private duty home care is through the roof. The pricing is through the roof. And so I'm always looking for volunteers, and the best volunteers are usually the seniors who have garnered some sort of love because they're either close, it's relative for them, they know people who struggle with dementia. But I'm always looking for volunteers who want to be trained to be dementia aides and want to support the caregivers that are doing this work every day in the home without training, without support. So that's want to put that out there. That's another way that we are able to give back and help the community.
Great.
I'm gonna add one more thing to this real quick, and I know we're on time. The other piece of it as a goal is to, as I think Dr. Epps said this, we need to change the mindset of this disease in our community. We're all on here because of someone who has been impacted by this disease, and now we have either a business, a nonprofit, something to give back to help. So that is showing that even though this disease can be something that is a test, it can also be a testimony. I found my groove as we all are talking in this lane because we were providing care for someone that we love, and we watched them decline. We watched them go through what the hardest, longest goodbye. But at the same time, it energized us to make sure somebody else didn't go through this. So when we talk about reducing the stigma, we have people that are either on the call that will rehear this, that has gone through this. Change your mindset of not looking at it as just a tragedy. Start thinking of it as, now, how can I use my experience that I have, which is hands-on experience, to now do something else to advocate to help somebody else. We have to get out of it as a mindset of doom and gloom, because when it fell in our laps, we didn't know what to do. But you know what? Somebody did. Somebody's already walked this journey. Someone's had these conversations. Someone is trying to figure it out. We need to start coming together to hear this. So having this platform is kind of the mindset of how we have to change this way of thinking about this disease. We've been dealing with it for a very long time. So now let's look at it as something that can cause us to be able to be more of a push to change, and it comes from the community first. So we are talking about these resources that we're doing, that we're creating. The only reason why I know for me, is because we found those gaps. These gaps of where they weren't serving the certain areas, they were coming to have these conversations. Dementia-friendly communities didn't start with me. I heard this before my research from the UK. I heard this information that was coming from the people who were bringing it to Wisconsin. The thing is, did it reach our community that's hit the hardest? So that's it. We just started saying, let's target it. So each one of us have these gifts. So now let's change this mindset, because we're very, very far behind, to start catching up and getting more speed of getting the resources, services, supports, and now be advocates and trying to find a cure for this disease or some treatment as well.
Yeah, meaningful conversations and then taking action together. Is that a good way to put it? We've got
Yeah.
to be able to step out and take some risks and not know that not everything is going to work, but some things are going to work better than you expected. So one question here, if each person can do one thing to help right now, what would you suggest? So what would be the one thing each of you would say, I want to take this to the next level?
I'll go ahead and start. I'll always finish off and tell people when they ask me that question, um, speak up and speak out. I think we as a people, we no longer can be silent. We have to be able to speak up, speak out, share what's going on, what we've experienced, because as Dr. Easter said, it can help someone else. It can shed better understanding on dementia, on caregiving. So that is my ask. If you can just start right there and speak up. And again, there's no way as Black people, we just cannot be silent any longer.
I would add, connect. To start connecting, you know, whatever that looks like, whether it's sharing through your social media, whether it is, you know, you get a bit of information and you're just texting somebody with it, you know, each one teach one. So just to connect.
Right, Dr. Bashir?
Yeah, for caregivers who don't call themselves caregivers, and they just giving mama something to eat, they're taking care of their dad, understand that you're not alone. That's the first thing. You're not alone, but we understand what paralyzing or being paralyzed is when it falls into your lap. There is somebody in your community that it has information to help. You see us on this screen right now. You can reach out to us and wherever you are to start with that process. When we talk about the agencies, Dr. Ebb said it. Don't assume. If you try one time and they didn't respond, don't give up. Right? Don't stop, because that what you have could help somebody not have to go through 6 years worth of struggle. Right? If you can't do it, connect to somebody that's on this screen.
Right.
That can get to the people, because what we want to make sure is that we don't want to be in crisis. We want help. So, in the last thing, in regards to this understanding of the vision of the disease, we do not want to be the hardest hit of this disease. We don't want to be the stats, but we are. So we need everybody that is also walking this path, that's been impacted by it, or living with it, or caring for someone, is to also pick up a bucket and help put this fire out that's right here, that's happening. This is the type of platform that we have to share that we got to do our part, but we also need to us all come together and work together to move this forward. So I want to thank Laura. I also want to thank you, Pam, for also making this happen, to put us on these screens, to have these conversations, to now have the recording to continue this on. So that was my last. I said more than one or two things, but I had to say it.
Well, I think you answered the last question that came up, and that was, you know, how do we reach the community who are not involved with faith, a faith community? We need to be collaborating with all of these stakeholders in the community. We need to have the conversations. We need to open up and connect with others, as we've all said. That is the way we're going to move forward and address some of these very difficult, challenging issues that we have in communities of color. I want to thank all of you for sharing. I'm pretty sure we could stay on another hour with all the conversation that we can have, but I think it's been enlightening. We've given your contact information to everyone on the chat. I will hopefully contact you, right? You're all open to conversations.
This one, before we leave, I do free Zooms with families all the time. That is something that no charge. If anybody ever wants a Zoom call, I bring in all the family from around the country, and we'll talk and just help navigate through the whole senior living industry as it pertains to dementia.
Right. Thanks so much to all of you for your time.
Thank you.
Sharing your expertise and for making such a difference. And together we will move this forward, right? And thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Blessings. Peace.